Daylight in our work is really, really key. The difference between a building and a piece of architecture is the mix of the experience, so the light, the materials, the way the user can feel in the space. So bringing daylight into our work is really, really important, and it's really understood a lot more than it used to be, but the alchemy of different times of the day, different directions, and the different effects light can have is still really, really a limited understanding of it, and getting that right is really important. We spend a lot of time on it in our work. Yeah, our clients are really interested in discussing daylight in their projects, and they're really coming to understand a lot more about it. Obviously, imagery about pieces of work that they really like, places that they've been to, all of that's broadening our experiences of daylight and their understanding of it too. Sometimes they don't understand how to capture it or to use it, and that's where architects come in, and the way we do that is a lot like an artist. So we're always considering the detail of how we achieve that experience of light, and really employing light in those ways in the spaces isn't that easy, but it's really worth thinking about a lot in the early stages of our work. So it takes a little bit of time and a lot of description to the clients about what that space might feel like. And we're not using VR to express that, and we use a lot of models, but really the best way is of working through it and describing it through imagery of work, and describing how those spaces will feel with the right kinds of light and the right experience of the light and the sequencing. You know, we often use experiences like going from light to dark and back to light again, and the way that feels, and the space and shape of the room, etc., and the textures and the reflections. The different kinds of light come about from orientation. So north light's very flat and even, and it's very useful in providing a good task light, shall we say, whereas the other spectrums of the light from south, east and west are totally different. So south's really warm, and east is a lovely directional morning light that is cooler than the west. So at the end of the day, west, you're getting some quite warm tones and temperatures of light, and it's really it's directional like morning, but it's much more balmy and warm and all-encompassing, a bit more like south light. And positioning your room or space or building in that orientation and sun path, it has its limitations and it also has its opportunities. So very quickly you might find that much of those spaces that you want to be in the morning, you would like the sunlight to be coming in the morning, such as the master bedroom and the breakfast space in the kitchen. That waking up sequence is really special if you're capturing the morning light. And equally, blocking out all north light can create too much directional contrast in the space. So a little bit of north light and one of those directional lights is a really lovely balance. If you see it as a limitation, sometimes it might be that you've got some of the spaces on the wrong side of the property or the project, and they're really not going to feel great at the wrong times of the day. And in actual fact, that's the architecture. You know, everything needs to be positioned in the way that it suits the sun path. And really for us, once we start on any project, when we go on site, that's the first thing we do. We've all got a compass in our apps on our phone, and that's where we start on site at a property, or thinking about the experience that we want to go through in that day path and all that sunlight. Once we've worked out the parts of the spaces in the plan and the experience we want to have, then we start thinking about the openings, and roof lights and windows and apertures are all really useful tools for that. So whilst a window can create view as well as light, it's not so strong a tool as capturing the sun path coming over the building during the day. And there's some quite surprising effects you can have sometimes when there's light coming from the west into a space that's actually on the east of the plan, something really lovely happens. And so we don't want to clumsily insert large holes in the roof because that bleaches the room of all its atmosphere. We really want to position roof lights really carefully, and those apertures we would choose the size of them, the scale of them, the proportion of them, and maybe the pattern of them. There might be a sequence of them. And that works really nicely for keeping the atmosphere and the experience, but without not enjoying any of that sunlight grid as it comes over in the day. So we really use products which allow us to design those roof lights and openings first and then select them later from product specification and catalogues. And the bespoke products allow us to do that, whether they're opening or they have blinds and automatic controls, etc. That all continues through whether the way we're thinking about that roof light and how it should be operated and how it should work. So the shape and the position of roof lights is really key. We've worked in some really interesting projects where we've created a long passageway that's really atmospheric, and just by placing smaller roof lights at intervals along the walkway, you get a really lovely effect on the floor, the walls, and really the key there is making sure that the curbs aren't really large so that the roof lights can wash the walls. And employing texture on the walls then is the last part of it, because that's really special as you're walking down the space when there's texture in those walls and surfaces that the light's coming onto. When the light comes through the roof light and can hit a wall, it's a really exciting experience, and that will change throughout the day. And really, whilst you're creating something that can start, you do get something really exciting happening. It can be really beautiful to photograph, and that's one of those spaces that you might be using at all times of day. So to get a very neat roof light close to the edge of the wall with a really nice curb detail externally, and then it washes the wall internally, is a really lovely effect. And I suppose the opposite of that is when we've used some bigger roof lights and we're really there looking at enjoying the atmosphere that they create through the roof light. So rather than the directional light inside, you might get the view of the underside of a tree or the sky, and actually those clouds racing by and those things, you know, it might be more of a sitting area underneath it, somewhere where you're going to stand, stay, sit, relax, and then the enjoyment of seeing the sky through it. You're really creating a little bit of the indoor-outdoor, which is a really lovely thing to enjoy for longer. And we use electric lighting to kind of balance that as the day turns to night, because dusk is really special too. So lighting around the roof light, and that in that instance, it's a really large roof light that we want to have. Even rain falling on it is really special. You know, that kind of, I suppose that's nature coming in rather than the daylight bouncing around in the passageway analogy.